The large room was filled with young soldiers from across the galaxy. They sat in neat rows, their different skin colors and body shapes making a strange rainbow under the bright lights. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few glowed softly in the dark corners. But they all wore the same blue uniforms of the Galactic Military Academy. Commander Zekithara walked slowly to the front of the room. His left arm was made of metal and plastic, clicking softly with each step. His right leg had been replaced too, leaving him with a slight limp that made his boots tap unevenly on the floor. Scars covered the visible parts of his gray skin, telling stories of battles fought long ago. The cadets watched him with interest. Everyone at the academy knew about Commander Zekithara. He had fought in more wars than most species had even heard of. His chest was covered with medals from a dozen different worlds. When he spoke, even the teachers listened. "Good morning, cadets," Zekithara said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "Today we will discuss warfare tactics used by different species across the galaxy." A young Krellin in the front row raised his hand. His name was Morden, and his red skin was still bright with youth. "Sir, will you tell us about the great victories of the Valdrian Empire?" Zekithara stopped walking. For a moment, something dark passed across his face. "There are no great victories, Cadet Morden. There are only survivors and lessons learned in blood." The room became quiet. Even the soft humming of the air system seemed to grow louder. "But yes," Zekithara continued, "I will tell you about battles I have seen. I will tell you about enemies I have faced. Some were strong, some were fast, some were very smart. But today, I want to talk about the most dangerous enemy I ever met." He walked to a large screen on the wall and pressed a button. Images of different alien species appeared, tall, short, covered in armor or flying through space with wings. "The Krellin Empire fights with honor and strength," he said, pointing to a picture of red-skinned warriors. "The Zephyrians use speed and surprise attacks. The crystalline hive thinks as one mind, making them hard to predict." More pictures flashed by. Each one showed fierce-looking aliens with weapons and ships. "I have fought them all," Zekithara said. "I have won some battles and lost others. But there was one species that changed everything I thought I knew about war." He pressed another button. The screen went black for a moment. Then a new image appeared. The cadets leaned forward to look. It was a human. The creature in the picture looked small and weak. It had no scales or armor, no claws or sharp teeth. Its skin was pink and soft-looking. It stood on two legs like many species but seemed fragile compared to the others they had seen. Cadet Morden laughed. "Sir, that thing looks like it could barely hurt a Siltrian bug rat." Several other cadets joined in the laughter. Even some of the older ones smiled. Zekithara did not smile. Instead, he walked closer to the cadets. His metal arm made a soft whirring sound as he moved. "I thought the same thing once," he said quietly. "I was wrong. Very, very wrong." The laughter died away. Something in the commander's voice made the room feel cold. "Let me tell you about humans," Zekithara said. "They come from a world called Earth. It is a blue and green planet with one yellow star. When our scouts first found them, we thought they would be easy to defeat. They had simple technology. Their weapons were basic. Their ships were slow." He clicked to the next picture. It showed human cities with tall buildings and flying cars. They seemed peaceful. They spent their time building things, growing food, and making art. Our intelligence report said they rarely fought wars with each other anymore. They appeared to be a gentle, weak species. Zekithara's mechanical hand closed into a fist. The Valdrian High Command decided to take some of their worlds. Just a few at first. We thought it would be simple. We thought they would surrender quickly and join our empire like so many others had done. Admiral Vextar, the Academy's leader, stood up from his seat in the back of the room. He was an old friend of Zekithara's, and his blue skin had grown pale with age. "Commander," Admiral Vextar said carefully, "perhaps we should focus on more standard tactical lessons today." Zekithara looked at his old friend. For a long moment, the two veterans stared at each other. Finally, the Admiral sat down without another word. "No," Zekithara said. "These young ones need to know. They need to understand what we learned the hard way. He turned back to the cadets. Many of them were sitting up straighter now, sensing that something important was about to happen. I was a captain then, Zekthara continued. Young and proud like many of you. I commanded a battle cruiser called the Fist of Valdros. We were part of the first wave sent to claim human territory. The screen changed again. Now it showed a massive space battle. Valdrian ships, huge and covered in weapons, faced off against smaller human vessels. We expected the humans to run away or ask for mercy. Instead, they fought. But the way they fought was unlike anything we had ever seen. Zekthara walked among the cadets now, his footsteps echoing in the quiet room. Other species fight in ways we understand. The Krellans charge forward with honor. The Zephyrians dance around their enemies. The crystalline hive moves like a perfect machine. But humans? Humans fight like the universe owes them something and they have come to collect. A young cadet near the back raised her hand. She was from the Altarian system, with silver skin that sparkled under the lights. Sir, she said, how can such weak-looking creatures be dangerous? Zekthara stopped walking. His good eye focused on her, while the mechanical one glowed softly. Red, that cadet, is the first lesson about humans. Never judge them by how they look. A human child can be more dangerous than a Krellan warrior if you give them the right tools and enough reason to fight. He returned to the front of the room and pressed another button. The screen showed a star map with red dots marking battles. The war lasted 4 years. 4 years of fighting an enemy that refused to follow any rules we understood. They turned everything into a weapon. Their merchant ships became bombs. Their farming equipment became tools of war. Even their children helped fight against us. The room was completely silent now. Even the cadets who had been whispering to each other were listening carefully. I am going to tell you 3 stories, Zekthara said. 3 battles that show you what humans are really like when they decide to fight. But I must warn you first. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of as many cadets as he could. These stories will change how you think about war. They will give you nightmares. Some of you may not sleep well for weeks after hearing them. But you need to know. Because one day you may have to fight alongside humans. Or you may have to fight against them. Either way, you must understand what they are capable of. Cadet Morden shifted in his seat. Sir, are you trying to scare us? Zekthara's expression did not change. No, Cadet. I am trying to prepare you. There is a difference. He walked back to the screen and stood with his back to the cadets for a moment. When he turned around, his face looked older somehow, as if remembering these stories had aged him. The first story is about a space station, a small research post, that we surrounded and cut off from all help. We thought the humans inside would surrender in a few weeks. We thought wrong. The commander took a deep breath and began to speak again, but now his voice carried a weight that made every word feel important. Let me tell you about the siege of Kepler Station and the day I learned that humans do not know how to quit. Commander Zekthara pressed a button on the wall screen. The image changed to show a small space station floating in the darkness between stars. It looked peaceful, with white metal walls and blue lights shining from its windows. Kepler Station, he said. A human research post near the edge of their territory. 300 people lived there. Scientists, engineers, their families. They were studying the stars and growing food in space gardens. The cadets looked at the picture. The station seemed tiny compared to the massive Valdrian warships they had seen in training videos. Our fleet surrounded the station, Zekthara continued. 15 heavy cruisers and 40 support ships. We cut off all their communications. No messages could get in or out. No supply ships could reach them. No help could come. He clicked to the next image. Now the screen showed the same station, but surrounded by dark shapes with red lights. The Valdrian fleet looked like hungry predators circling their prey. I was captain of the Fist of Valdros then. My orders were simple. Wait for the humans to surrender. Take the station without damaging it. Use it as a base for attacking deeper into human space. Zekthara walked among the cadets again. His metal leg made soft clicking sounds on the floor. Standard. Siege tactics say that people will surrender when they run out of food and water. The station had maybe 6 weeks of supplies. We expected them to give up in 4 weeks just to be safe. Cadet Morden raised his hand. Sir, did they try to escape? No, Zekthara said. That was our first surprise. They did not even try to run away. Instead, they sent us a message. The screen changed again. This time it showed a human man in a blue uniform. He had brown hair and calm eyes, but something in his expression made the cadets feel uncomfortable. Captain Jake Morrison, Zekthara said. Commander of Kepler Station, this is what he told us. Zekthara pressed another button. A voice filled the room. It was steady and polite, but there was something cold underneath the words. This is Captain Morrison of Kepler Station. We have received your surrender demand. We reject it. This station belongs to humanity, and humanity does not give up what is ours. If you want it, come and take it. The message ended. The room was quiet for a moment. That was all, Zekthara said. No threats, no angry words, just a simple statement. At the time, I thought the human was trying to sound brave before surrendering. Later, he clicked to the next image. It showed the inside of the space station. Families were eating together in a large dining room. Children were playing games. People were working at computers and tending to plants. For the first 2 weeks, life on the station continued as normal. They kept their regular schedules. The children went to school. The scientists did their research. It was almost like they had forgotten we were there. Admiral Vextar spoke from the back of the room. Commander, perhaps you should explain the strategic situation more clearly. Zekthara looked at his old friend. The strategic situation, Admiral, was that we were about to learn why humans are the most dangerous species in the galaxy. He turned, back to the cadets. In the 3rd week, things began to change. Our sensors detected strange activities inside the station. Power levels were shifting. Internal structures were being moved around. We thought they were preparing some kind of defense. The screen showed technical diagrams of the station. Red lines highlighted areas where changes were happening. We were right and wrong at the same time. They were preparing defenses, but not the kind we expected. The humans were not just getting ready to fight us. They were turning their entire home into a weapon. Zekthara's voice grew quieter, and the cadets had to lean forward to hear him. Dr. Lisa Chen was the station's chief scientist. She had been studying how to grow plants in space. But when the siege began, she started studying something else. She started learning how to kill Valdrians. A new picture appeared on the screen. It showed a human woman with black hair and intelligent eyes. She was wearing a white coat and holding a strange device. Dr. Chen took apart the station's reactor shielding. This was metal that protected people from deadly radiation. She melted it down and made armor plates. But this armor was special. It was designed to fit human bodies, not Valdrian ones. Cadet Morden looked confused. Sir, how does that help them fight? Because, Cadet, Dr. Chen had been studying our biology for weeks. She knew exactly how Valdrian bodies work. She knew where our weak spots are. The armor she made had spikes and blades in exactly the right places to hurt us when we got close. Several cadets shifted uncomfortably in their seats. But that was just the beginning. Zekthara continued. The humans took their food-growing systems and turned them into weapon factories. Plants that once made fruits and vegetables now made poison gas. Machines that once watered gardens now sprayed acid. The screen showed the inside of the station again, but now it looked different. The peaceful gardens had been replaced with strange laboratories. The dining rooms had become workshops where people built weapons. Sergeant Ben Torres was a security guard on the station, just one man responsible for keeping order among 300 civilians. When the siege began, he became something else entirely. A new picture showed a human man in a black uniform. He looked ordinary, like someone you might pass on the street without noticing. But his eyes were alert and dangerous. Sergeant Torres began training the civilians to fight, not just the adults but everyone. Children learned to set traps. Elderly people learned to make bombs from kitchen supplies. Even the station's pets were trained to attack Valdrian scent markers. Zekthara stopped walking and faced the cadets directly. By the 6th week, we were getting worried. The humans should have run out of food by then. But they were still active, still making changes to their station, still sending us polite messages telling us to go away. Where did they get more food? Asked a cadet from the Altarian system. Zekthara's mechanical eye glowed brighter for a moment. They made more food. Dr. Chen had figured out how to turn the station's waste recycling system into a food production facility. They were eating things that no civilized species would consider edible. But they were surviving. The room was very quiet now. Some of the cadets looked sick. In the 8th week, we decided to board the station. Waiting was not working. Our commanders were getting impatient. They wanted results. The screen changed to show Valdrian soldiers in heavy armor preparing to enter small attack ships. I led the first boarding party myself, 200 of our best warriors. We cut through the station's outer hull and entered through the cargo bay. Zekthara touched his mechanical arm, as if remembering old pain. The first thing we noticed was the gravity. It was wrong. Too strong in some places, too weak in others. Dr. Chen had turned the station's artificial gravity system into a weapon. As we moved through the corridors, gravity would suddenly increase and crush soldiers to the ground. Or it would disappear entirely, leaving us floating helplessly in the air. He clicked to the next image. It showed a dark corridor with strange shadows and floating debris. The second thing we noticed was the children. The cadets all looked up at this. Even Admiral Vexitar leaned forward in his seat. They were still there, still alive. But they were not hiding in safe rooms like we expected. They were part of the defense. Human children, some as young as 6 years old, were operating trap systems and guiding us into ambushes. Zekthara's voice became even quieter. One little girl, maybe 7 years old, offered to show us the way to the command center. She seemed scared and helpful. She led 20 of my soldiers down a maintenance tunnel. When they were halfway through, she pressed a button and filled the tunnel with superheated steam from the station's power systems. The room was completely silent now. None of those 20 soldiers came back. The little girl escaped through a ventilation shaft that was too small for us to follow. Cadet Morden raised his hand slowly. "Sir, what happened to your arm?" Zekthara looked down at his mechanical limb. "Captain Morrison happened to my arm. I found him in the command center, along with Dr. Chen and Sergeant Torres. They were not trying to escape or hide. They were waiting for us." The screen showed the station's control room. It was filled with strange devices and flashing lights. 3 humans stood calmly in the center, watching the door. Morrison walked up to me. He was not armed. He looked like he wanted to shake hands, like we were meeting at a peaceful conference. When I reached out to grab him, he smiled. Zekthara held up his mechanical hand. His skin was covered with acid that Dr. Chen had made from the station's cleaning supplies. It ate through my armor and dissolved my hand in seconds. While I was screaming, Sergeant Torres activated a device that filled the room with electricity. Half my boarding party died in that room. The rest of us barely escaped. And as we ran back to our ships, Morrison's voice followed us through the station speakers. Zekthara pressed a button and Captain Morrison's calm voice filled the room again. "Thank you for visiting Kepler Station. We hope you enjoyed your stay. Please come back anytime. We will be ready for you." The message ended. The cadets sat in shocked silence. "We tried 2 more boarding attempts," Zekthara said. "Each time, fewer of our soldiers came back. The humans had turned their home into a maze of death traps and ambushes. Every room was a weapon. Every corridor was a killing ground." Commander Zekthara waited for the cadets to settle down before continuing. Some of them were still whispering about the story of Kepler Station. Others looked pale and shaken. He pressed a button on the wall screen, and a new image appeared. It showed a beautiful planet with green fields, blue oceans, and white clouds. Peaceful farms stretched across rolling hills. Small towns dotted the landscape like toys scattered by a child. "New Terra," Zekthara said, "a human farming world on the edge of their territory. Population 2 million. No military bases, no weapons factories, no space defenses. Just farmers growing food to feed other human colonies." The planet looked so peaceful that several cadets relaxed in their seats. After the horror of Kepler Station, this seemed like it would be an easier story. "Our intelligence said New Terra would fall in 3 days, Zekthara continued. "Maybe a week at most. The people there were not soldiers. They were farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, simple people living quiet lives." Cadet Morden raised his hand. "Sir, why attack a farming planet? There was nothing valuable there." Zekthara's mechanical eye glowed brighter. "That is exactly what we thought, Cadet. We were wrong again. He clicked to the next image. It showed massive Valdrian transport ships descending through the planet's atmosphere like dark clouds. The invasion began on a Tuesday morning, local time. 200,000 Valdrian soldiers landed at 50 different sites across the planet. We had enough firepower to level every city and town within hours. The screen changed to show Valdrian troops marching across farm fields. They looked confident and well-armed, their weapons gleaming in the sunlight. The first day went exactly as planned. Our soldiers took the main cities without resistance. The humans seemed to panic and run away. By evening, we controlled all the important locations on New Terra. Zekthara walked among the cadets, his metal leg clicking on the floor. General Kravak, our invasion commander, sent a message to the Valdrian High Command. He said the planet was secure and ready for colonization. He expected to receive his promotion within the week. The commander stopped walking and faced the cadets. General Kravak died 3 days later, along with 30,000 of his soldiers. The room became very quiet. On the screen, a new image appeared. It showed a human man with gray hair and kind eyes wearing simple farm clothes. Governor Sam Mitchell, Zekthara said. He had been a soldier once, many years before. But when we invaded New Terra, he was just an old man who grew corn and raised cattle. He lived in a small house with his wife and grandchildren. The image changed to show the same man, but now he was wearing military gear and holding a weapon. His kind eyes had become hard and dangerous. On the second day of the invasion, Governor Mitchell sent a message to all the humans on New Terra. It was broadcast on every radio and television. Even our soldiers heard it. Zekthara pressed a button, and an old human voice filled the room. It was calm and steady, like a grandfather talking to his family. My fellow citizens, strangers have come to our world. They think they can take what we have built with our own hands. They think we will simply give up our homes, our farms, our lives. They are wrong. This is our land. These are our children, and we will not surrender what is ours. The message continued. Every farm is now a fortress. Every field is now a battlefield. Every man, woman, and child is now a soldier. We know this land better than they ever will. We will make them pay for every step they take on our soil. The voice stopped. The cadets sat in uncomfortable silence. Within hours of that broadcast, everything changed, Zekthara said. The humans who had been running away suddenly started fighting back. But they did not fight like soldiers. They fought like the land itself had come alive to destroy us. The screen showed a vast wheat field stretching to the horizon. It looked peaceful and empty. Colonel Amy Walsh had been a military officer before she became a farmer. She owned 3,000 acres of wheat fields outside the main city. When our troops moved through her land, she was waiting for them. A new image appeared. It showed a human woman with short blonde hair and steady hands. She was lying flat, in the wheat, almost invisible among the golden stalks. Colonel Walsh had turned her wheat fields into the largest sniper range in the galaxy. She could hit a Valdrian soldier from 2 kilometers away, hidden in grain that looked empty to our eyes. Zekthara touched a scar on his neck. She shot me from 1,500 meters. The bullet went right through my throat. I spent 3 weeks in a medical tank learning to speak again. He clicked to the next image. It showed the same wheat field, but now it was marked with red dots, showing where Valdrian soldiers had fallen. In one day, Colonel Walsh and her neighbors killed 800 of our troops, 800 soldiers picked off one by farmers hiding in their own crops. And we never even saw them. Cadet Morden shifted in his seat. Sir, how could farmers be so good at fighting? Because they were not just farmers anymore, Zekthara replied. They were farmers who had decided to become killers, and humans, I learned, are very good at killing when they put their minds to it. The screen changed again. This time it showed a small town with neat houses and tree-lined streets. It looked like a place where nothing bad could ever happen. Dr. Richard Stone lived in the town of Pleasant Valley. He was a plant scientist who helped farmers grow better crops. He had a wife, 2 children, and a dog named Max. He grew flowers in his backyard and coached the local children's baseball team. A new picture showed a smiling human man with brown hair and glasses. He was holding a small child and laughing. When our soldiers reached Pleasant Valley, Dr. Stone was not smiling anymore. His family had been evacuated, but he stayed behind. He had work to do. The image changed to show the same man, but now he was wearing a gas mask and handling strange chemicals. Dr. Stone knew everything about plant biology. He knew which chemicals made crops grow strong and healthy. But he also knew which chemicals could kill. And he knew that Valdrian biology was different from human biology. Zekathara's voice grew quieter, and the cadets had to lean forward to hear him. Dr. Stone poisoned the water supply, but not with random poison, with chemicals that were completely harmless to humans but deadly to Valdrians. Our soldiers drank the water and died within hours. The human civilians drank the same water and felt nothing. Several cadets looked sick. One of them, a young Zephyrian with blue skin, raised her hand. "Sir, is it legal to poison water supplies?" Zekathara looked at her with his good eye. "Cadet, when someone invades your home and threatens your children, you stop caring about what is legal. You start caring about what works." He clicked to the next image. It showed farms with strange-looking animals. The cattle were bigger than normal and the pigs looked somehow wrong. The humans did not just use their knowledge of plants as weapons. They used their animals too. Dr. Stone and the other farmers had been changing their livestock for years, making them stronger and healthier. When the war began, they changed them in different ways. The screen showed a close-up of a cow. It looked normal except for its eyes. They glowed with an unnatural light. They infected their cattle with modified diseases. Diseases that would spread to Valdrian soldiers but not hurt humans. Our troops would pet a friendly cow, and 3 days later, they would be dead from a plague that human medicine could not cure. Zekathara walked to the window and looked out at the academy's training grounds. But the worst part was the children. The cadets all looked up at this. Even Admiral Vextar sat forward in his seat. Human children on New Terra did not hide in safe places like children should during a war. They became part of the war effort. They knew the land better than anyone. They could move through forests and fields without making a sound. They could set traps that our experienced soldiers would never see coming. The screen showed a group of human children, maybe 10 or 12 years old. They were carrying backpacks and looked like they were going on a camping trip. These children would approach our camps at night. They looked innocent and harmless. Some of our soldiers felt sorry for them and tried to help. That was a mistake. Zekathara turned back to the cadets. The children carried bombs made from farm chemicals. They would walk into our camps, smile at our soldiers, and then detonate explosives that killed everyone within 50 meters, including themselves. The room was completely silent now. Several cadets looked like they might be sick. In 3 weeks, we lost 50,000 soldiers to human children. Children who should have been playing games and going to school. Instead, they were dying to kill us. He clicked to the next image. It showed a human boy, maybe 8 years old, sitting in a hospital bed. Half his face was covered with bandages. This boy's name was Tommy. He lost his eye and his left arm when he blew up one of our supply convoys. When our medics tried to treat him, he looked up at them and said, "Did I get them all?" Zekathara's mechanical hand began to shake slightly. That was when I began to understand what we were really fighting. Not just soldiers, not just farmers. We were fighting an entire world that had decided we were not welcome. Every rock, every tree, every living thing on New Terra was trying to kill us. The screen changed to show a map of the planet. Red areas marked where Valdrian forces had been, defeated or driven back. Commander Zekathara stood silently at the front of the room for a long moment. The cadets watched him waiting. Some of them looked scared, others looked sick. All of them were quiet. Finally, he pressed a button on the wall screen. A new image appeared. It showed a human spaceship floating in the darkness between stars. The ship looked ordinary, nothing special about its design. It was smaller than most Valdrian warships, with simple lines and basic weapons. The USS Defiance, Zekathara said. A mid-sized frigate in the human fleet. Crew of 230 people. Standard weapons, standard armor, standard everything. There was nothing remarkable about this ship when I first saw it. He clicked to the next image. It showed the same ship, but now it was damaged. Parts of its hull were missing. One of its engines was dark and cold. Debris floated around it like a cloud of metal snow. The Defiance was part of a human fleet that tried to break through our blockade of the Centauri system. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the human fleet was destroyed or retreating. The Defiance was left behind, crippled and alone. Cadet. Morden raised his hand. Sir, why did the other human ships leave it behind? Zekthara looked at the young Krellin. Because, Cadet, they thought it was dead. We thought it was dead too. We should have made sure. The screen changed to show a technical diagram of the ship. Red areas marked damaged sections. There were many red areas. The Defiance had lost its faster-than-light drive. Its life support was failing. Half the crew was dead or wounded. The ship was leaking air, power, and coolant. Any reasonable captain would have surrendered or abandoned ship. A new image appeared on the screen. It showed a human man with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a captain's uniform that was torn and stained with blood. Captain Roy Henderson was not a reasonable man. He was 58 years old, a career naval officer who had spent his whole life in space. The Defiance was his ship, and he was not going to give it up. Zekthara walked among the cadets again. His mechanical legs seemed to click louder in the quiet room. We left the Defiance floating in space and moved on to attack other targets. Our sensors showed the ship was powerless and drifting. We assumed the crew would die from lack of air within a few hours. He stopped walking and faced the cadets. We were wrong. 3 days later, the Defiance attacked one of our supply convoys. Somehow Captain Henderson had gotten his ship moving again. The screen showed a convoy of Valdrian cargo ships moving through space. They looked peaceful and unguarded. Suddenly, the damaged human ship appeared from behind an asteroid, firing its weapons. The attack made no sense, Zekthara continued. The Defiance could barely move. Its weapons were working at maybe 20% power. It should have been easy for our escort ships to destroy it. He clicked to the next image. It showed the aftermath of the battle. 2 Valdrian cargo ships were destroyed, and the Defiance was gone. But Captain Henderson was not fighting like a normal ship captain. He was fighting like a human who had nothing left to lose. The Defiance hit our convoy, destroyed 2 ships, and disappeared before our escorts could respond. Admiral Vextar spoke from the back of the room. Commander, perhaps you should explain how a damaged ship could move so quickly. Zekthara's mechanical eye glowed brighter. Because, Admiral, the humans had stopped caring about their own safety. They had turned their ship into a weapon that was more dangerous to them than to us. He clicked to show another image. This one showed the inside of the human ship. It looked like a nightmare. Cables and pipes were exposed. Emergency lights cast strange shadows. Steam and smoke filled the corridors. Chief Engineer Maria Santos had kept the ship running by cannibalizing everything that was not absolutely necessary. She had torn out the crew quarters to use the metal for repairs. She had stripped the walls to get wiring for the engines. She'd even removed the safety systems from the reactor. A new picture showed a human woman with black hair and oil-stained clothes. Her hands were covered with cuts and burns from working with damaged machinery. Chief Santos knew that removing the safety systems meant the reactor could explode at any moment. But she also knew that it would give the ship more power. So she removed them anyway. Cadet Mordoun looked confused. Sir, why would they risk killing themselves? Because, Zekthara replied. They were already dying. The ship's life support was failing. They had maybe a week of air left, so they decided to spend that week making us pay for destroying their fleet. The screen changed to show a star map. Red lines marked the path of the Defiance as it moved from one attack to another. For the next 2 months, the Defiance hunted our supply ships across 3 star systems, always appearing where we did not expect it, always hitting us and disappearing before we could fight back. He traced the red lines with his mechanical finger. Captain Henderson had figured out our supply routes and schedules. Lieutenant Commander Paul Kim, his tactical officer, had studied our ship movements and found patterns we did not even know we had. A new image showed a human man with Asian features and intense eyes. He was looking at computer screens covered with numbers and diagrams. Lieutenant Commander Kim had been a mathematics teacher before joining the Navy. He used his knowledge of numbers to predict where our ships would be and when they would be most vulnerable. Zekthara clicked to the next picture. It showed another convoy under attack, but this time the image was different. The Defiance was moving in impossible ways, spinning and diving like a fighter instead of a heavy ship. By the 3rd month, we realized something horrible. The Defiance was getting better at fighting, not worse. The ship was falling apart, but the crew was learning to use that to their advantage. He walked back to the front of the room. Chief, Santos had figured out how to use the ship's damaged systems as weapons. When the artificial gravity failed, they used it to confuse our targeting systems. When the hull started breaking apart, they used the pieces as projectiles. The screen showed a technical diagram of the ship's systems. Most of them were marked in red, showing damage or failure. But the most disturbing discovery was what they were doing to themselves. Zekthara's voice became very quiet, and several cadets leaned forward to hear him. The crew of the Defiance was dying slowly from radiation poisoning, lack of oxygen, and system failures. But instead of trying to save themselves, they were using their own bodies to keep the ship running. A new image appeared. It showed human crew members working in the ship's engine room. They were not wearing protective gear, and their skin looked pale and sick. They were using their own blood to seal coolant leaks in the reactor. Human blood has properties that make it useful for emergency repairs, but working that close to the reactor without protection was killing them. Several cadets looked sick. One of them, a young Altarian, covered her mouth with her hand. Chief Santos had calculated that each crew member could work in the engine room for about 3 days before the radiation killed them, so she organized shifts. People would work for 3 days, then die, and someone else would take their place. The room was completely silent now. By the 4th month, half the crew was dead. But the ship kept fighting. Captain Henderson had trained everyone to do multiple jobs. When the weapons officer died, a cook took his place. When the navigator died, a maintenance worker learned to plot courses. Zekthara clicked to show another image. This one showed the ship's bridge, but it looked different. The walls were covered with pictures and writing. The crew had started leaving messages for each other, instructions on how to operate systems, notes about where supplies were hidden, last words for families they would never see again. He pointed to one section of the wall where human writing was visible. This message was from Chief Santos to whoever would replace her. It said, "The reactor will hold for 6 more days if you keep the pressure below 80%. Do not try to repair the number 3 coolant pump. It will kill you faster than the radiation will. Tell my daughter I love her." The cadets sat in stunned silence. In the 5th month, we finally cornered the Defiance near a dead star system. 3 of our heavy cruisers surrounded it. There was nowhere for the human ship to run. The screen showed the final battle. The small, damaged human ship was surrounded by massive Valdrian warships. It looked like a wounded animal surrounded by predators. Captain Henderson sent us a message before the battle began. Zekthara pressed a button and a human voice filled the room. It was weak and tired, but still defiant. "This is Captain Henderson of the USS Defiance. We know you have us surrounded. We know this is the end. But we want you to know something. We are not sorry for what we have done. We are not sorry for the ships we have destroyed. We are not sorry for the soldiers we have killed. We are only sorry that we could not kill more of you." The message continued. "You came to our space and destroyed our fleet. You killed our friends and our families. You thought that would be the end of it. You were wrong. We may die today, but other humans will remember what you did, and they will make you pay for it." The voice stopped. The room stayed quiet. "The final battle lasted 12 minutes, Zekthara said. The Defiance was outgunned and outnumbered, but it kept fighting until the very end." The screen showed the human ship exploding in a burst of white light. Commander Zekthara stood in the silent room looking at the faces of the cadets. Some of them looked scared. Others looked confused. A few looked like they might be sick. All of them were waiting for him to continue. He pressed a button on the wall screen. The image that appeared was different from all the others. It showed a blue and green planet surrounded by peaceful-looking space stations. Ships moved calmly between the stations, carrying cargo and passengers. Everything looked normal and quiet. "Earth," Zekthara said simply. "The human homeworld. Population 12 billion. This is where humans come from. This is the heart of their civilization." Cadet Mordoon raised his hand slowly. "Sir, are you going to tell us about the invasion of Earth?" Zekthara looked at the young Krellin for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No, Cadet. There was no invasion of Earth. That is the point of this final story." He clicked to the next image. It showed a meeting room with beings from many different species sitting around a large table. Humans sat on one side, Valdrians on the other, After 4 years of war, representatives from both sides met on a neutral station to discuss peace terms. I was there as a military advisor. I thought I understood what the negotiations would be about. Zekthara walked among the cadets, his metal leg clicking softly. I expected the humans to ask for mercy. They had lost many battles. Many of their colonies had been damaged or destroyed. Their fleets had taken heavy losses. I thought they would beg us to stop the fighting. He stopped walking and faced the cadets directly. Instead, the human ambassador thanked us for the training exercise. The room became very quiet. Several cadets looked confused. "Training exercise?" asked a young Altarian cadet. Zekthara nodded slowly. "That is what Ambassador Helen Cross called it." She sat across from our negotiators, smiled politely, and said that the Valdrian Empire had provided valuable combat experience for human forces. The screen changed to show a human woman with silver hair and calm eyes. She wore a simple blue dress and looked like someone's grandmother. Ambassador Cross was not a soldier. She was a diplomat who had spent her career preventing wars, not fighting them. But when she spoke to our negotiators, her words were more frightening than any weapon. Zekthara clicked to the next image. It showed documents and charts spread across the meeting table. The ambassador opened a briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers. She said these were reports from the human military about the war. She asked if we would like to see them. He looked around at the cadets. What we read in those reports changed everything we thought we knew about the conflict. The screen showed pages of text and numbers, too small for the cadets to read clearly. The first report was about Kepler Station. Remember the research post where 300 civilians held off our fleet for 3 months? According to the human military, that station was staffed entirely by volunteers, scientists and engineers who had asked to test new defensive systems. Zekthara's mechanical hand began to tremble slightly. The weapons they used against us, the traps they built, the tactics they employed, all of it had been planned months before we arrived. The humans knew we were coming, and they had prepared the station as a testing ground for their ideas. Cadet Morden looked shocked. "Sir, you mean it was all planned?" "Worse than that, Cadet. It was practice. The human military was using our attacks to train their people and test their equipment." The screen changed to show the next report. This one had pictures of New Terra. The second report was about the farming planet. According to human records, the 2 million civilians on New Terra had been given military training for 6 months before our invasion. Every farmer, every teacher, every child over the age of 10 had been taught how to fight. Zekthara walked back to the front of the room. Governor Mitchell was not just an old farmer who decided to resist. He was a retired general who had been placed on New Terra specifically to organize its defense. Colonel Walsh was not just a former soldier who became a farmer. She was an active military instructor teaching civilians how to use their land as a weapon. The cadets sat in stunned silence. Dr. Stone, the plant scientist who poisoned our water supplies, he was part of a human biological warfare research program. His job was to find ways to create species-specific toxins. The screen showed more documents, these ones marked with official seals and security classifications. But the most shocking revelation was about the USS Defiance. Zekthara's voice became very quiet. According to the human naval records, Captain Henderson had volunteered for what they called a persistence testing mission. The Defiance had been deliberately left behind during the fleet retreat. Its job was to see how long a crippled ship could continue fighting against superior forces. The room seemed to grow colder. Chief Santos had not been improvising repairs with blood and spare parts. She had been following a manual called Emergency Resource Utilization in Extended Combat Scenarios. Every horrible thing they did to keep that ship running had been planned and practiced. Admiral Vexitar stood up from his seat in the back of the room. His face was pale. "Commander, are you saying the entire war was some kind of experiment?" Zekthara looked at his old friend. "Not an experiment, Admiral. A training program." He clicked to show a new document on the screen. This one had an official human military seal at the top. Ambassador Cross showed us the real human battle plans. Plans that had never been implemented. Plans that made everything we had experienced look like children playing with toys. The screen showed technical diagrams of weapons and ships that looked far more advanced than anything the cadets had seen before. The humans had been holding back. The civilians on Kepler Station, the farmers on New Terra, the crew of the Defiance. They had all been fighting with basic equipment and limited resources. The real human military had never fully engaged. Zekthara walked to the window and looked out at the training grounds. Ambassador Cross explained that human military doctrine divides warfare into different levels of intensity. What we had experienced was Level 2 conflict, limited engagement using civilian volunteers and basic equipment. He turned back to the cadets. She asked if we would like to see the plans for Level 5 conflict. The screen changed to show new images. These showed massive ships that dwarfed anything in the Valdrian fleet, weapons that could destroy entire planets, space stations the size of moons. Level 5, according to human military planning, involves the complete transformation of entire star systems into weapons platforms. It involves technologies that we had never seen before. It involves strategies that would make the horrors of Kepler Station look like a gentle disagreement. Cadet Morden raised his hand, but his voice was shaky when he spoke. Sir, why did the humans agree to peace if they were so much stronger than us? Zekthara looked at the young Krellin with something that might have been pity. Because, Cadet, they had achieved their real objective. They had tested their training programs and equipment against a real enemy. They had learned what they needed to know. Continuing the war would not have taught them anything new. The screen showed the final page of the peace treaty. Ambassador Cross explained that the Valdrian Empire had served its purpose as a training partner. She thanked us for helping the human military prepare for future conflicts against more dangerous enemies. The room was completely silent now. More dangerous enemies? Whispered an Altarian cadet. The humans showed us intelligence reports about threats from outside our galaxy, species that make the Valdrian Empire look weak and primitive. They had been preparing for wars that we could not even imagine. Zekthara walked back to the front of the room. The peace treaty was not a negotiation between equals. It was a dismissal. The humans were finished with us. They had learned what they needed to know, and now they were moving on to prepare for bigger challenges. He clicked to show one final image. It showed a human fleet leaving the edge of the galaxy, heading toward distant stars. 6 months after the peace treaty was signed, most of the human military left our galaxy entirely. They went to fight enemies in distant star systems, enemies that were so dangerous that fighting them required the full power of human civilization. The cadets sat in shocked silence, trying to process what they had learned. That is the truth about human warfare, Zekthara said. Everything terrible thing I have told you today, the children with bombs, the farmers with poison, the ghost ship that would not die, all of it was humans operating at a fraction of their true capability. He looked around the room, meeting the eyes of as many cadets as he could. The humans we fought were civilians and volunteers using basic equipment. The real human military was preparing for wars against enemies that could destroy galaxies. Admiral, Vextar spoke from the back of the room, his voice barely above a whisper. What does this mean for us, for the Academy, for the future? Zekthara turned to face his old friend. It means we must never fight humans again, unless we are prepared to face an enemy that views our entire civilization as a training exercise. It means we must work very hard to remain their allies because the alternative is too terrible to consider. He walked back to the screen and turned it off. But most importantly, it means that when you graduate from this academy and become officers, in your own fleets,